Hey y'all, it's Bradley the Singing Chef, and today I am baking something other than biscuits. I am making for you my salted, chewy, double chocolate chip cookies. It's 8:30 p.m. I'm craving chocolate chip cookies, so that's what we are making. Now you may hear a little sizzle happening over here in my saucepan. What I have over here is count them, two sticks of butter in this saucepan. I'm bringing that to a boil. I want those milk solids in there to separate, releasing the water that's in the butter so that I can create brown butter. These are brown butter-based cookies. So that's starting to come to a boil. I want to keep an eye on it. It's getting a little foamy in there. So you want to kind of stir around. And once you see it start getting a little, you can take it off the heat so you can see how those milk solids are doing down in there. Once you see sort of a nutty brown color in the bottom, that's the milk solids that have separated, and that is a good thing. That is where we're going to get a lot of the flavor for these cookies. Keep on going. Still bubbling away. That is going to be fine. Now, baking is a lot different than my normal cooking. Baking is science, okay? I'm a singer, and I was okay in science in school, but for science, I need a textbook and a roadmap. So you see over here, for the first time ever, I actually have a recipe sitting in front of my face. That's because the science of this recipe is really, really important, that you get the balance of all the ingredients correct. Okay, now we're going. Very, very good. While that is boiling away, I've got my iPad here, but I want to show you this. So my buddy, Josh Solmeyer, who is in the Voices of Liberty with me, is a man of many talents. And one of those talents is woodworking. And he made this recipe stand for me. I've got to show you this sorcery. Like, look, this hinge is like, I don't understand. It's like it's carved out of like one piece of wood that's still jointed together. And he's got this really cool Bible verse on there. And the hungry soul he has filled with what is good, which I thought was really cool too. So shout out to Josh. Thanks for this, buddy. It's really, really amazing. And it's helping me out today for sure with this recipe for some cookies. Set the recipe back up there. Still not quite brown yet, but the magic is starting to happen. If it starts to foam up too much on you and overboil in your pot, you just take it off the heat, stir it around a little bit. Oh, I'm seeing some brown butter now, and we're getting there. And then put it back on the heat. The bigger the pot you use for this, the faster this is going to happen. If you use a smaller pot, it's just going to take a little bit longer for the butter to brown. Okay, I'm seeing some brown solids down there. Once it kind of turns that caramelly brown color, it is done and good to go, so you can turn off your heat. Now I've got this large glass measuring cup over here, and I'm gonna pour this hot butter and all the solids into that glass mixing cup to stop the cooking, basically, and let it start cooling down. Now, this butter actually needs to cool down to room temperature, and that's going to take probably 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm going to let it sit out for a little while, and I'm going to try to kickstart that cooling process by popping this in the fridge for a while. So let's let it stay there for a bit. And in a minute, I'll take a break and pop that over in my fridge. As you can see, it is quite brown. That is not what regular yellow butter looks like, but that brown color is what you're gonna want in this recipe. All right, while that's chilling out, literally, I'm gonna work on my dry ingredients over here. So in this particular cookie, I use 2 different kinds of flour. I use bread flour and I use all-purpose flour. The difference is that in bread flour, they're from hard grains, and so there's a little bit more protein content in bread flour. Obviously, you would normally use it for bread. And so in order to help the chewy texture of these cookies, I want to use a cup of bread flour. And I'm going to sift all these ingredients together. And then I'm going to do 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour. So says the recipe. Spoon and 1/4. That's a 1/2 cup. Now, you're probably thinking, why am I doing this whole measure it off thing? So you don't want to pack your flour in your cup measuring. It's actually not the proper amount. And again, like I said, baking is science, so we want everything to be as exact as possible. So I'll take a spoon and I take my flour out. I put it into the container of my measuring cup and I rake off the top of it. And that should be the proper amount. So that was my 3/4 of a cup of AP or all-purpose flour. Now, I said these were salted cookies, and they are indeed. Actually, the butter that I used is also salted butter. Most dessert recipes will say unsalted, but I like the salt kick against the chocolate in these because there's so much chocolate and sugar in the cookie that the salt balance, I think, is really, really good. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of salt to my dry ingredients as well. It's 2 teaspoons. So that's 1/2, 1, 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, not powder, baking soda. I like just a skosh more than 1/2 tablespoon. So whatever a skosh is, it's not a proper measuring thing. See, even in baking, I'm not good at measuring. Okay, so that's all my dry ingredients. Get those sifted together and into my baking dish. I think the sifting process is pretty important for this as well, just to make sure there aren't any lumps. And I think it just helps the batter for the cookies come together nicely. Almost there. Tap down anything on the sides. Sifter through. Now I find sometimes in my sifter, if I have a really coarse grain of salt, sometimes the salt doesn't all sift, but this was pretty fine salt, so you should be, yeah, that's in there. We're good. Put my sifter away. All right, so I'm going to take a break now so that I can get this butter cooled down, because that will be the next step in my process. And until that's cooled down to room temperature, I can't really move forward. So I'm going to take a break, but I'll be right back. Okay guys, I'm back. So I've taken the brown butter that we made in the saucepan. I put it in this Pyrex measuring cup and put it in the fridge for at least 10 minutes just to get it, you know, sort of close to room temperature. It's a little warm still on the bottom. Now, when these milk solids come out and some of the water evaporates, you had a cup of butter, but you're probably a little less than a cup on your measuring cup. So if you're short a little bit, I'm gonna put just a little bit of water just to get me back up to close. A little bit more water. Just to get me back up to a cup. And that water will finish the cooling process for me. Okay, Set that aside for a second. Okay, my dry ingredients that I sifted together, I put those in a bowl and I've got that set aside ready to go eventually. But the next step are our sugars and that wonderful brown butter that we did. So we're gonna take a cup of dark brown sugar, put it into a large mixing bowl. Then I'm gonna take a half a cup of regular white sugar, so a fourth, and a half a cup of sugar. And then another Kickstarter for anything with chocolate for flavor is espresso powder. So I'm gonna put just a little bit of espresso powder, just a teaspoon and a half. So that's a half, 1 and 1 1/2 teaspoons of espresso powder. Then I need some vanilla flavoring, some vanilla extract. 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. There's a half, 1, 1 1/2, 2. Maybe a little bit more when in there, but vanilla extract. It's good flavor. Not mad. Alrighty. So now that I've got all the sugars and the espresso and my vanilla into the bowl, the next thing I need to do is take that brown butter that we cooled down and put it into this mixing bowl. And there's some brown milk solids down the bottom that have settled, and you want all of that because that is some serious flavor power in those dark milk solids. Alrighty, now we're gonna beat this with a hand mixer just to get it nice and fluffy. You wanna go probably 1 to 2 minutes. So I'm gonna start working on mixing these together, and I'll be back. Okay guys, I'm back. I spent about a minute or two, probably 2.5 minutes or so, to get the butter and the sugar to sort of a fluffy stage. And now I'm gonna add to that sugar and butter 1 large egg and 1 large egg yolk. So a full egg plus a yolk. So that goes in to my mix. And then I'm gonna beat that just to incorporate the egg. Now that the eggs are in there, I'm going to add back the dry ingredients that we sifted together earlier. Now you only want to do this about 1/3 or so, 1/4 or 1/3 at a time, because otherwise you will have a cloud, not of witnesses, but of flour all over you and your kitchen. So I'm just going to push in about 1/3 of that mixture in there. And incorporate that with the ingredients. Just until it's combined enough that you don't see too much extra flour. Now let's add another portion of the dry ingredients. Blend that. Just until most of the flour incorporated. Now you see it's starting to thicken up and look like cookie batter. until I tap in the rest of the sifted dry ingredients. All in there. One more mix. Probably wondering why I'm making all that racket at the end. I usually let my beaters go out of the batter a little bit at the end just to shake off as much of the excess batter as I can. Now that's done with the dry ingredients bowl, so put that away. So it's okay, like if there's still some specks of flour around, that's not a problem. You literally don't want to overwork this dough too much. So just until almost all of your flour is done. Okay, now finished with the mixer. Set that aside, and now for the good stuff. It's chocolate time. Oh yeah. So I told you earlier, these are brown butter double chocolate chip cookies. I have a cup, yeah, it's a cup. Sorry, lies, a half a cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips and a half a cup of dark chocolate chips, so bittersweet chocolate. So in goes my half a cup of bittersweet, in goes my half a cup of semi-sweet, spoon. And in the words of Moira on Schitt's Creek, you fold in the chocolate chips. You just fold it in, David. I don't know if you guys watch that television show, but it's hysterical to me. They're trying to make enchiladas and they don't know what fold in the cheese means. Because David thinks he needs to actually fold the tiny shreds of cheese. Anyway, folding in both of those chocolate chip morsels of loveliness, and you are done with cookie dough batter heaven. All right, you may have noticed that I sort of tried to clean out my station a little bit to give myself some moving around elbow room so that I can actually lay out these cookies. So I've got some cookie sheets that I've lined with parchment paper. Put this down here too, so that it's just out of the way. Lined with parchment paper, and then I'm just going to scoop these cookies out. You want them to be 2 to 3 inches apart from each other so they've got some room to do their thing. I use an ice cream scoop just to sort of try to make them even in amount, basically. Oh my gosh. You can still smell that brown butter coming off this cookie dough. It's ridiculous. All right, I'm going to continue scooping these out. And then, once I have them all laid out, I'm actually going to cover them and refrigerate them for about between a half an hour and 45 minutes. That just gets all the flavors locked in, loaded, before putting everything in the oven. So I'm gonna finish. I've got another pan ready to put some more cookies on. I'm gonna get those wrapped up and put into the fridge for a bit. Once those are finished chilling for a bit, we will preheat our oven and get going. You're gonna preheat your oven to 350 and we will be ready to make cookie magic. Hi guys, okay, it is the moment of truth. What has happened since we last chatted in that little break that I took is I took all of the cookies that were in the fridge for about 30 minutes on their prepared trays. I put those in a 350-degree oven for between 12 and 14 minutes. One pan happened to take 12, the other one happened to take 14. Just keep an eye on. When you see the outer rim of the cookies start to get a little brown, that's when you know that you're good to go. Even if the center's not quite there yet, because once you take them out of the oven, you're gonna let them stay in the pan for about 3 or 4 minutes. Let them cool a little bit there before you remove them and put them on baking racks to cool completely. I let these cool for about an additional 15 minutes and they should be good to go. If you want a little bit more salt on the cookie, you can add some salt flakes on top. This particular batch I don't think necessarily needs it, but that is definitely something you can do. It really depends on the salt content of the butter that you use. I tried a cookie sneakily out of the oven earlier to check that salt content, and these don't need any more. So I've got my ice cold glass of almond milk ready to go. So it's time to try these. Get a little closer. Oh, look at this. I mean, come on. Look at that cookie goodness. Oh yeah. They are actually a little better now that they've had some time to cool, and still so chewy. The nuttiness of that brown butter and the sweet chocolate chips, both the semi-sweet, and I got a dark one in that bite. The bittersweet chocolate is great too. You are gonna love this cookie recipe. I hope you'll try it. Thank you so much for joining me again. This is Bradley the Seeing Chef. I hope you'll like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube video. Check me out on Instagram as well. And bake more cookies.